The security footage showed everything: Karen's kids splashing in my pool while she lounged on my deck chair, sipping what looked like my wine. But when I locked that gate and dialed 911, I had no idea I was about to uncover the real reason. She'd been targeting my family for months. The truth would destroy everything I thought I knew about my perfect suburban life, and by the time the police arrived, I'd be the one in handcuffs. The first thing David Chen noticed when he pulled into his driveway was the sound, children's laughter echoing from his backyard. He frowned, checking his watch. 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. His own kids wouldn't be home from school for another hour, and his wife Sarah was at her yoga class until 5. David sat in his Honda Civic for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, trying to place the sounds. The laughter was high-pitched, excited, punctuated by splashing. His stomach dropped. Someone was in his pool. He grabbed his laptop bag and house keys, moving quickly but quietly toward the side gate that led to his backyard. The wooden fence was 6 feet high, but through a gap in the slats, he could see movement, flashes of bright swimsuits, water cascading. David's jaw clenched. He'd invested $12,000 in that pool last summer, complete with a state-of-the-art filtration system and safety features. The insurance alone cost him a fortune, and now some neighborhood kids were treating it like a public swimming hole. He reached for the gate latch, then stopped. Voices carried over the fence, not just children, but an adult woman, speaking in the entitled tone he'd come to know all too well. "Madison, honey, don't splash so much. You'll get water on my magazine." Karen Morrison. Of course it was Karen Morrison. David's blood pressure spiked. Karen lived 2 houses down in the sprawling suburban development, and for the past 6 months, she'd made his family's life increasingly miserable. It started with passive-aggressive complaints about his lawn care, escalated to accusations that his garbage cans were an eyesore, and reached a crescendo last month when she'd called the HOA about his kids' chalk drawings on the sidewalk. But this was trespassing. This was breaking and entering. David pulled out his phone and started recording as he approached the gate. The latch was open, hanging loose. He always kept it locked. Always. Which meant Karen had either climbed over or found another way in. He pushed through the gate and stopped dead. Karen Morrison sat in his wife's favorite lounge chair, wearing oversized sunglasses and a flowing cover-up that probably cost more than David's monthly car payment. Her perfectly manicured feet were propped up on his outdoor ottoman, and in her hand was a glass of what looked suspiciously like the expensive Chardonnay Sarah had been saving for their anniversary. In the pool, 3 children, Karen's twins Madison and Mason, plus their younger brother Jake, were engaged in a raucous game of Marco Polo. Pool toys that definitely weren't theirs floated around them: a flamingo float, water guns, diving rings. "Excuse me," David said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "What exactly is going on here?" Karen looked up with the casual indifference of someone who'd been caught shoplifting a pack of gum. "Oh, hi David. Hope you don't mind, the kids were just so hot, and your pool looked so inviting." "I absolutely do mind." David held up his phone, making sure she could see he was recording. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Karen's expression shifted, the mask of suburban politeness slipping. "Oh please. Don't be so dramatic. It's just a pool. You're not even using it." "That's not the point." David's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. "You can't just walk into someone's backyard and help yourself to their property. Kids, out of the pool. Now." "Mommy, do we have to?" Madison called from the deep end, treading water. "You don't have to do anything, sweetheart," Karen said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Mr. Chen is just being unreasonable." David felt his control slipping. "Unreasonable? Lady, you broke into my yard." "I did not break in. The gate was unlocked." "No, it wasn't." David pulled out his keys, showing her the small bronze key for the gate lock. "I locked it this morning." "I always lock it." Karen shrugged, taking another sip of wine. "Well, maybe you forgot. Maybe you should be more careful with your security if you are so worried about people using your precious pool." The casual dismissal hit David like a slap. He dealt with difficult people before. His job in IT support required infinite patience with entitled customers, but this was different. This was his home, his sanctuary, and this woman was treating it like a personal resort. Kids out of the pool, he repeated, his voice harder now. I'm not asking again. You can't make us, Mason said, 8 years old and emboldened by his mother's presence. It's a free country. It's not a free pool, David snapped. This is private property, and you're all trespassing. Karen stood up from the lounge chair, her movements deliberately slow and theatrical. You know what your problem is, David. You're selfish. Here you have this beautiful pool, this big backyard, and you can't even share it with your neighbors. With children who just want to cool off on a hot day. Share it. David's voice cracked with disbelief. You didn't ask to share it. You broke in and helped yourself. I keep telling you, I didn't break in. And honestly, your reaction is completely over the top. What kind of person calls children trespassers? The kind of person whose property is being invaded. David felt his face flushing. Look, I don't know what your problem is with me and my family, but this stops now. Get your kids out of my pool and get off my property. Karen's smile turned predatory. Or what? You'll call the police. On a mother and her children who are guilty of nothing more than enjoying a beautiful day. Yes, David said, pulling out his phone. That's exactly what I'll do. Go ahead, Karen said, settling back into the chair. Call them. I'd love to see you try to explain why you are harassing a single mother and her children. David's finger hovered over the screen. Something in Karen's tone gave him pause, a confidence that seemed disproportionate to the situation. But then he looked at his pool, at the stranger's children playing with toys they'd brought from home, at the woman drinking his wine and acting like she owned the place. He dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a trespassing situation, David said, walking toward the pool house where he knew his security camera was recording everything. Someone has broken into my backyard and is refusing to leave. Are you in immediate danger, sir? No, but, Mom. Madison called from the pool. What's that man doing? David looked up to see Karen's expression change, her confident mask slipping for just a moment. She was staring at something behind him, her face suddenly pale. He turned around and saw what had caught her attention, the blinking red light of his security camera, mounted under the eaves of his pool house. It had been recording everything, her casual trespassing, her refusal to leave, her children treating his property like their own. Sir, the 911 operator's voice brought David back to the call. Are you still there? Yes, I'm here. The trespassers are still on my property, and I have everything recorded on my security system. Karen stood up abruptly, wine slushing in her glass. Kids, maybe we should go. But Mom, we just got here. Jake protested from the shallow end. Now, Karen said, her voice sharp with sudden urgency. But David was already moving toward the gate. If Karen wanted to play games, he could play games too. He reached the gate and heard the soft click of the electronic lock engaging. David, Karen said, her voice taking on a different tone. What are you doing? Making sure you stay put until the police arrive, David said, pocketing his keys. Since you're so confident about your legal standing, I'm sure you won't mind explaining it to them. You can't lock us in here. Karen's composure cracked completely. That's false imprisonment. It's a citizen's arrest, David said, though he wasn't entirely sure if that was true. You're trespassing, and you're staying put until the authorities arrive. Karen's phone appeared in her hand as if by magic. We'll see about that. Michael. It's me. I need you to come to the Chen house right now. Yes, the one on Maple Street. There's been a situation. David frowned. Michael Morrison worked for the city attorney's office. He'd seen the man at neighborhood gatherings, always impeccably dressed, always ready with legal advice whether people wanted it or not. Sir? The 911 operator was still on the line. Officers are being dispatched to your location. Can you stay on the line until they arrive? Absolutely, David said, settling into a patio chair where he could watch both the gate and the pool. I'm not going anywhere. Karen had moved to the far end of the pool, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in urgent whispers. Her children had finally started to sense the tension, their playful shouts dying down to confused murmurs. "Mommy, why can't we leave?" Madison asked, climbing out of the pool. "Because Mr. Chen is being very unreasonable," Karen said, wrapping her daughter in a towel. "But Daddy's coming, and he'll sort this out." David watched the interaction with growing unease. There was something about Karen's confidence, even in the face of obvious wrongdoing, that didn't sit right. She'd been too casual about the whole thing, too prepared for his reaction. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, running late. Stopped. At grocery store. Home by 5:30. At least she wouldn't walk into this. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the conference room table where David sat with a stack of documents that represented his entire adult life. His mortgage papers, insurance policies, property tax receipts, all suddenly worthless pieces of paper in the face of Karen's deed. Detective Sarah Reeves, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, sat across from him while Officer Martinez finished photocopying the documents. Through the glass partition, David could see Karen and Michael in another conference room, their conversation animated and urgent. "Mr. Chen," Detective Reeves said, settling into her chair. "I need you to walk me through exactly how you came to purchase this house." David rubbed his temples, trying to organize his thoughts. 3 years ago, my wife and I were looking for a family home. We found the listing through a realtor, Janet Walsh from Premier Properties. The house was listed by Sunset Properties as a standard sale. "Did you ever meet anyone from Sunset Properties directly?" "No, everything went through Janet," she said. "The owners were out-of-state investors who wanted a quick sale." David's voice cracked slightly. "We thought we were getting a good deal." Detective Reeves made notes on her pad. "And you've been making mortgage payments to First National Bank?" "Same as always." David pulled out his phone and showed her his banking app. "Here's my payment history. 34 payments of $2,847 each. Never missed one." "Mr. Chen, I'm going to need you to prepare yourself for some difficult news," Detective Reeves said gently. "We've run a preliminary check on the property records. The deed Mrs. Morrison provided appears to be legitimate. Sunset Properties is indeed a limited liability company registered to Karen Morrison." David felt the room spin. "But that's impossible. I have a mortgage." "You can't get a mortgage on a house you don't own." "Actually, you can," Detective Reeves said. "If the deed transfer was fraudulent, if someone forged documents to make it appear they owned the property when they didn't, then yes, a bank could issue a mortgage based on false information." "Are you saying I'm a victim of fraud?" "I'm saying that's one possibility we are investigating." Detective Reeves leaned forward. "But there's another possibility, Mr. Chen. One that's going to be harder to hear." David's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes, buyers participate in mortgage fraud without knowing it. Sometimes, what appears to be a legitimate sale is actually a complex rental agreement disguised as a purchase. That's insane. Why would anyone do that? Tax benefits, rental income, and in some cases, to trap tenants in situations where they can't easily leave." Detective Reeves pulled out a file. "Mr. Chen, have you ever been late on any payments? Utility bills, credit cards, anything?" "No, never. We are very careful about our finances." "Have you ever made any modifications to the property? Additions, renovations, anything that might be considered alterations?" David thought about the fence he'd installed last summer, the security system, the new deck Sarah had wanted for their anniversary. "Some improvements, yes. But normal homeowner stuff." "Did you get permits for any of these improvements?" "The deck, yes. The security system didn't require one." "The fence?" David trailed off, remembering Karen's complaints about the fence. "I didn't think the fence needed a permit." Detective Reeves made another note. "Mr. Chen, if you're actually a tenant rather than an owner, then any unpermitted modifications could be considered property damage. It could be grounds for eviction. Eviction? David's voice rose. I've put $40,000 into that house. I've never missed a payment. I've been the perfect neighbor except for the fence issue, the garbage cans, the chalk drawings, Detective Reeves said, reading from her notes. According to Mrs. Morrison's complaint history, you've been in violation of the property agreement multiple times. Property agreement? I signed a purchase agreement. We are going to need to examine all your paperwork very carefully, Detective Reeves said. But Mr. Chen, I have to ask, did you ever read the fine print? Every page of every document you signed. David's silence was answer enough. He'd been so excited about buying their first house, so focused on the monthly payment and the interest rate, that he trusted his realtor to handle the details. Janet Walsh, he said suddenly. She would have caught something like this. She's been selling houses for 20 years. Mr. Chen, we ran a check on Premier Properties. Janet Walsh hasn't been licensed to sell real estate in this state for over 5 years. Her license was revoked for fraudulent practices. The conference room felt like it was closing in around David. So everyone was in on it. The realtor, the seller, the bank. Not necessarily the bank. If the paperwork looked legitimate, if the credit checks passed, the bank would have no reason to suspect fraud. Detective Reeves closed her file. Mr. Chen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you ever had any direct contact with Karen Morrison before today? Just the neighborhood complaints. She's been harassing us for months. Before that, any contact at all? David thought back to when they'd first moved in. She brought over cookies the first week. Said she was welcoming us to the neighborhood. She seemed nice enough. Did she ask any questions about your purchase? About your finances? She asked how we liked the house, if we were planning to stay long term. Normal neighbor stuff. David paused, remembering something. She did ask about our mortgage rate. Said she was thinking of refinancing her own place. Detective Reeves nodded grimly. Mr. Chen, I think Karen Morrison has been monitoring your situation from the beginning. The question is why? Through the glass partition, David could see Karen on her phone, pacing back and forth while Michael sat with his head in his hands. Their children were nowhere to be seen, presumably with a babysitter or family member. Detective, David said. Slowly, what happens if she really does own the house? What happens to my family? That depends on several factors. The terms of your agreement, whether fraud was committed, whether you have any legal recourse. Detective Reeves softened her tone. But Mr. Chen, you need to understand, if Karen Morrison can prove she owns that property, and if she can prove you violated the terms of your tenancy, she could potentially have you evicted. In how long? 30 days. Maybe less if she can demonstrate immediate cause. David felt sick. We have nowhere to go. Our kids are in school here. Sarah's job is here. This is our life. I understand that, and we are going to do everything we can to get to the bottom of this. Detective Reeves stood up. But right now, I need you to call your wife. She needs to know what's happening, and she needs to start gathering every document related to your house purchase. David pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Sarah answered on the first ring. David. Your text scared me. What's going on? Sarah, I need you to sit down. David took a deep breath. I'm at the police station. Karen Morrison, she's claiming she owns our house. What? That's ridiculous. I thought so too, but she has documentation. Sarah, I need you to go to the filing cabinet in the home office and get out all our house papers. Everything. The purchase agreement, the mortgage documents, the insurance policies, everything. David, you're scaring me. How can she own our house? I don't know yet. But Sarah, there's something else. The realtor who sold us the house, she wasn't licensed. This whole thing might be some kind of fraud. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long David thought the call had dropped. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice barely a whisper. David, what are you saying? I'm saying we might not actually own our house. We might be tenants and we might be about to get evicted. That's impossible. We've been paying the mortgage for 3 years. We have equity. We have, I know, baby. I know. But right now, I need you to get those documents and meet me at the station. Can you do that? The kids will be home from school soon. Call your sister. Ask her to pick them up. Don't tell them anything yet. Sarah's voice was shaking now. David, how is this possible? How did we not know? I don't know. But we are going to figure it out. After hanging up, David sat in the empty conference room, staring at his hands. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd built, suddenly felt like it was made of paper. Detective Reeves returned with a cup of coffee and a sympathetic expression. Your wife's coming. Yes. She's bringing all our documents. Good. While we wait, I want to show you something. She pulled out a tablet and opened a file. This is the property history for your address. It shows all the transfers of ownership over the past 20 years. David studied the screen. I don't understand. It shows the house being sold to Sunset Properties 5 years ago, then to us 3 years ago. That's what it should show. Look at the dates more carefully, Detective Reeves said. The house was transferred to Sunset Properties in March 2020. You purchased it in June 2022. What happened in those 2 years? David squinted at the small print. It shows a rental income. The house was being rented out to 3 different families, all of whom were evicted for various violations. Property damage, noise complaints, failure to maintain the premises. Detective Reeves scrolled through the records. Mr. Chen, I think you're the 4th family to live in that house thinking they owned it. Where are the other families now? That's what we are trying to FBI Special Agent Monica Torres arrived at the police station at 9:47 p.m., her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and her eyes sharp with the kind of focus that came from years of financial crimes investigation. David and Sarah sat in the conference room surrounded by 3 years' worth of documents while Detective Reeves briefed the federal agent on the situation. How many properties are we talking about? Agent Torres asked, settling into a chair. Across from the Chens. We've identified 14 so far, Detective Reeves replied. All sold through shell companies, all with fraudulent realtors, all following the same pattern. And the total amount of fraud? Conservative estimate. $8.7 million over 5 years. Sarah gasped. $8 million. Mrs. Chen, your family alone has paid over $100,000 in mortgage payments, plus improvements and maintenance, Agent Torres explained. Multiply that by 14 families, factor in the tax fraud and the property appreciation from forced improvements, and we are looking at a major operation. David leaned forward. Agent Torres, what I don't understand is how Karen managed to fool the banks. How did we get approved for a mortgage on a house we were actually renting? Sophisticated document forgery. Your loan application showed you were buying from Sunset Properties, which technically was true. What you didn't know was that Sunset Properties was selling you a rental agreement disguised as a purchase. Agent Torres pulled out a tablet. Look at this. She showed them a side-by-side comparison of David's purchase agreement and what appeared to be an identical document. This is your contract, she said, pointing to the left side. And this is what we found in Karen Morrison's files. Notice anything different? David squinted at the small print. The documents looked identical except for one section near the bottom. The signature page. Look more carefully at paragraph 18, subsection C. Sarah found it first. It says, property use agreement instead of property ownership transfer. But that's not what our copy says. Because your copy was altered after you signed it, Agent Torres explained. You signed the rental agreement version, but you were given a copy that looked like a purchase agreement. How is that even possible? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Very careful document preparation and a complicit notary. The notary who witnessed your signatures, Patricia Valdez, has been missing for 2 years. We think she's either dead or in witness protection. David felt the room spinning again. Are you saying Karen Morrison might be dangerous? Actually dangerous? Agent Torres exchanged a look with Detective Reeves. Mr. Chen, 3 of the families who were evicted from Karen's properties have filed missing persons reports on individuals connected to their cases. Realtors, notaries, even a banker who started asking too many questions. Missing persons? Sarah gripped David's hand. What kind of person are we dealing with? Someone who's been running this operation for at least 7 years, possibly longer. Someone with connections to organized crime, access to professional forgers, and a very sophisticated understanding of real estate law. Agent Torres pulled up another file on her tablet. What's most concerning is that Karen Morrison doesn't appear to exist before 2015. What do you mean? David asked. I mean we can't find any records of her before 8 years ago. No birth certificate. No school records, no employment history. Karen Morrison is likely not even her real name. The conference room fell silent. Through the glass partition, they could see that Karen's lawyer was gone, but Karen herself was still in the other room. Now sitting alone. Michael Morrison was nowhere to be seen. Where's her husband? Sarah asked. Being interviewed by a white-collar crime unit, Agent Torres said. He's cooperating fully. Apparently, he's been completely unaware of his wife's activities. What? About their children? David found himself asking, despite everything Karen had done to his family. With Michael's parents. He's filing for emergency custody and divorce papers first thing in the morning. Agent Torres' expression softened slightly. Mr. Chen, despite what Karen Morrison has done to your family, Michael and those children are victims too. David nodded, but his mind was racing with questions. Agent Torres, if Karen's been doing this for 7 years and if people connected to her cases have gone missing, why are we sitting here talking about it? Why hasn't she been arrested? Because until tonight, we didn't have enough evidence. The families who reported problems were dismissed as disgruntled tenants. The missing persons cases seemed unconnected. But your security footage, combined with Michael Morrison's financial records and Karen's reaction when she realized she was being recorded, that's given us the break we needed. Detective Reeves leaned forward. Agent Torres, there's something else. We found this in Karen's purse when we processed her belongings. She handed over an evidence bag containing what looked like a small electronic device. GPS tracker, Agent Torres identified immediately. Mr. Chen, we're going to need to check your vehicles. You think she's been tracking us? I think she's been monitoring your entire family. Your movements, your routines, your habits. That's how she knew when to escalate the harassment, when to file complaints, when to make her move. Sarah stood up abruptly. Our children. Oh God, our children. Agent Torres, she knows their school, their schedules. Mrs. Chen, we've already contacted the school and arranged for additional security. Your children are safe. Agent Torres stood as well. But I need to be honest with you about what happens next. What do you mean? We are going to arrest Karen Morrison tonight on federal fraud charges. But her lawyer is going to have her out on bail by tomorrow morning. And the first thing she's going to do is file for emergency eviction. Can she do that if she's been arrested? Unfortunately, yes. The property ownership issue is separate from the criminal charges. Until we can prove in court that the deed is fraudulent, she still has legal standing as the property owner. David felt like he was drowning. So even though we know she's a criminal, she can still throw us out of our home. I'm afraid so. But Mr. Chen, that's where things get interesting. Agent Torres pulled out her phone. We've been monitoring Karen's communications since this afternoon. She's made several calls to someone we've been trying to identify for months, someone who appears to be running similar operations in 3 other states. So there are more people like her. We think Karen Morrison is part of a much larger network. And if we're right, then your case might be the key to bringing down the entire operation. Agent Torres met David's eyes. But we are going to need your help. What kind of help? We need you to go home tonight and act like nothing has changed. We need Karen to believe she's won, that her plan worked. We need her to contact her associates and potentially reveal information about the larger network. Sarah shook her head. You want us to go back to our house and pretend we don't know we are about to be evicted by a criminal? I want you to go back to your house and help us catch the person who's been destroying families for years. Agent Torres' voice was firm, but not unkind. Mrs. Chen, we believe there are dozens of families in your situation. Maybe hundreds. Your cooperation could save all of them. And if we refuse, then Karen Morrison gets released on bail tomorrow, serves you with eviction papers, and disappears before we can build a case against her associates. She'll resurface somewhere else and start the whole process over again. David looked at his wife, saw the fear in her eyes, but also something else, anger. Pure, righteous anger. What exactly would we need to do, he asked. Go home. Maintain your normal routines. We'll have agents watching the house, but they'll be invisible. If Karen contacts you, and we think she will, you act surprised by the eviction notice. You act like a normal family being victimized by circumstances beyond their control. For how long? 72 hours. That's how long we think it will take for her to contact her network and arrange her exit strategy. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. And then what? What happens to our home? If everything goes according to plan, we'll have enough evidence to seize all of Karen's properties as proceeds of criminal activity. The courts will have to sort out legitimate ownership, but you'll have time to fight for your rights. And if the plan doesn't work? Agent Torres was quiet for a moment. Then you'll have 3 days to find somewhere else to live. The conference room door opened and Officer Martinez entered with an urgent expression. Agent Torres, we have a problem. Karen Morrison's lawyer just returned with a writ of habeas corpus. We have to release her in 20 minutes. 20 minutes? David stood up. But you said she'd be out on bail tomorrow. Her lawyer is better than we anticipated, Agent Torres said grimly. Which means we need to move fast. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, I need an answer right now. Will you help us? David looked at Sarah, then at the stack of documents that represented their shattered life, then at the woman through the glass partition who had systematically destroyed their family for 3 years. Agent Torres, he said, what exactly did? You mean when you said Karen would contact us? We believe she'll try to intimidate you into leaving quickly and quietly. She'll want to make sure you don't have time to investigate the legality of the eviction or seek legal counsel. She'll threaten us. Possibly. Or she might try a different approach, fake sympathy, claims that she's just a surprise. David and Sarah arrived home at 11:23 p.m. to find their house exactly as they'd left it that morning, except now everything felt different. The familiar front porch, the flower beds Sarah had planted last spring, the security system David had installed to protect their family, all of it suddenly felt like stage props in someone else's elaborate performance. Their children were asleep at Sarah's sister's house, safe for now, but the empty house felt haunted by the echoes of their normal life. David touched the recording device behind his ear as they walked through the front door, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, FBI agents were watching their every move. It feels wrong being here, Sarah whispered as they stood in their living room. Like we are trespassing in our own home. We are trespassing, David said grimly. We've been trespassing for 3 years without knowing it. They went through the motions of their evening routine. Sarah started a load of laundry, David checked the locks and set the alarm system. But both of them kept glancing out the windows, expecting to see Karen Morrison's silhouette lurking in the shadows. At 12:47 a.m., David's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. David, this is Karen. I know today was difficult for everyone. Can we talk tomorrow? I think there might be a way to work this out that benefits both our families. David showed the message to Sarah, whose face went pale. She's already starting, Sarah whispered. David typed back, what kind of arrangement? The response came immediately, too complicated for text. Can you meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Playground area. Neutral ground. She wants to meet, David told Sarah. Away from the house, away from witnesses. Should you agree? David touched the recording device again. Agent Torres had said they needed Karen to incriminate herself on tape. A public meeting would be perfect, private enough for Karen to speak freely, but safe enough that David wouldn't be in real danger. Yes, he typed. See you at 2. Thank you, David. I think you'll be surprised by what I have to offer. Sarah shuddered. I don't like this. What if it's a trap? It is a trap, David said. The question is who's trapping whom. They tried to sleep, but every sound outside made them both bolt upright. A car door slamming. A dog barking. The whistle of wind through the trees. At 3:30 a.m., Sarah finally fell into an exhausted sleep, but David lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what Karen Morrison planned to offer him. The next morning dawned grey and humid, with the kind of oppressive heat that made everything feel sticky and uncomfortable. David and Sarah went through the motions of a normal day: coffee, breakfast, checking emails, but the tension in the house was palpable. At 10 a.m., a courier arrived with official-looking documents. Eviction notice, David said, opening the envelope. Effective in 72 hours for violation of lease terms, specifically unauthorized property modifications, and failure to maintain premises according to rental agreement standards. 72 hours, Sarah said numbly. That's exactly what Agent Torres predicted. David read through the legal documents, noting the precise language and professional formatting. This isn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. These papers were prepared weeks ago, maybe months. She's been planning our eviction since before yesterday's incident. The pool thing was just her excuse to serve papers she already had ready. Exactly. David set the documents aside. Sarah, I want you to take the kids and stay at your sister's house until this is over. No. We are in this together. This could be dangerous, David. That woman has been manipulating our family for 3 years. I'm not running away now. Sarah's voice was firm with resolve. Besides, if something goes wrong, you'll need someone who knows what really happened. At 1:30 p.m., David drove to Riverside Park, his hands sweating on the steering wheel despite the air conditioning. The recording device felt enormous behind his ear, though he knew it was virtually invisible. Agent Torres had assured him that surveillance teams would be positioned throughout the park, but he still felt utterly alone as he pulled into the parking lot. Karen Morrison was already there, sitting on a bench near the playground. She'd changed clothes since yesterday, gone was the flowing cover-up and designer sunglasses, replaced by a simple sundress and minimal makeup. She looked like any suburban mother watching her children play, except her children were nowhere to be seen. David, she said, standing as he approached. Thank you for coming. Karen. David kept his voice neutral, professional. You said you had something to offer. I do. She gestured to the bench. Please, sit. This is going to take a few minutes to explain. David sat down, hyper-aware of the recording device capturing every word. Around them, the park hummed with normal afternoon activity: joggers on the path, families with strollers, teenagers playing basketball on the courts. It was surreal to be discussing his family's destruction in such an ordinary setting. David. I owe you an apology, Karen began. Yesterday got completely out of hand, and I take full responsibility for that. You take responsibility for trespassing on my property. I take responsibility for not being honest with you from the beginning. Karen turned to face him fully. David, I should have told you years ago that I own your house. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid of exactly what happened yesterday. I was afraid you'd be angry, that you'd feel deceived, that you'd want to leave. Karen's voice took on a practiced tone of regret. The truth is, David, you and Sarah have been the best tenants I've ever had. David felt a chill at her casual use of the word tenants. We thought we were homeowners. I know, and that's my fault. The real estate agent, Janet Walsh, she was supposed to explain the arrangement properly. But she took shortcuts, and you ended up with the wrong impression. The wrong impression that we owned our home. David, does it really matter what we call it? You've been living there for 3 years. You've been happy there. Your children have thrived there. Why does a piece of paper change any of that? David forced himself to stay calm. Because we've invested over $100,000 in a house we apparently don't own. And every penny of that investment has been appreciated and valued, Karen said smoothly. David, that's actually why I wanted to meet with you today. I have a proposition. What kind of proposition? Karen reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. I want to sell you the house. Actually sell it to you, this time. No confusion, no legal complications. A clean transfer of ownership. David stared at the folder. For how much? $450,000. That's almost double what we paid 3 years ago. David, you've seen the market. Property values have skyrocketed. $450 is actually below current market value. I'm giving you a deal because I appreciate what good tenants you've been. David opened the folder and scanned the sales agreement. It looked legitimate, professionally prepared, with all the correct legal language. But something about it made his skin crawl. Karen, if you're really willing to sell me the house, why the eviction notice? Why the emergency meeting? Because I'm under pressure from my business partners, Karen said, her voice taking on an urgent edge. David, I haven't been entirely honest with you about my situation either. I don't actually own this property alone. I have investors, silent partners who expect certain returns on their investments. What kind of investors? The kind who don't like delays or complications. Karen's voice dropped to almost a whisper. David, these people aren't patient. If I can't show them a resolution to this situation within 48 hours, they are going to want to liquidate the asset. Liquidate the asset. Sell the house to the highest bidder. Which means you and your family would be evicted immediately. And the house would go on the market for $600,000 or more. David felt the recording device behind his ear and reminded himself that this conversation was being captured. Who are these investors, Karen? People it's better not to know too much about, Karen said. David, I'm trying to protect you here. I'm trying to give you a way to stay in your home. For $150,000 more than we already paid. For ownership. Real ownership. Legal ownership that no one can ever take away from you. Karen leaned closer. David, I know this is a lot of money. But think about what you'd lose if you have to start over somewhere else. Moving costs, new deposits, higher rent prices, different schools for your children. And if we can't come up with $450,000 in 48 hours? Karen's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Then I'm afraid my hands are tied. My partners will take over and I won't be able to protect you anymore. Protect us from what? From people who see your family as nothing more than an obstacle to profit. Karen stood up from the bench. David, I like you. I like Sarah. I like your children. But sentiment doesn't pay bills and it doesn't satisfy investors who expect returns. David stood as well, his mind racing. Karen was essentially threatening his family while pretending to offer them salvation. It was masterful manipulation, and he could see how previous families had been trapped by the same tactics. I need to discuss this with Sarah, he said. Of course. But David, I need an answer by tomorrow evening. After that, the decision will be out of my hands. Tomorrow evening. 8 p.m. Meet me at your house, our house, and bring either a cashies